Hello, good morning, and welcome to Thoughts and Updates for this week. I am on the third part of the Kirkintilloch Trail. I started coming from the house, going to the town hall, then to what is just beside me, the museum, and I'm now at a marker, which is a piece of public art done by Marion Smith, which is designed to celebrate the fact that there was weaving in here, the lappet weaving pattern popular around about the 18th century. Although the industry has gone, there is an example of it apparently in the museum. The museum's free. The sculptor who's put this marker down is somebody who likes public art, some other stuff online from her, and there are a number of markers along this town demonstrating that it has a lot of history. And when you consider that just behind me there is the Barony building, behind which is the museum, which you can just see, if I can get my finger at the right place there. And then at the other side of that is the town hall. So we've not come very, very far in terms of the walk, but therefore demonstrates quite clearly that there is a lot of local history round about. And as it is dawn in Scotland, the sun just managing to make a very strong appearance behind me, and things are turning in this particular time of year. We have the tail end of summer, and now we're getting closer and closer to the autumn and what the winter is going to look like, which over the last few years has seen some snow, which I love. Not everybody does. So, industry. Celebrating industry by putting up monuments to it. Now, it's not just the industry that was weaving in this town. There was also the Lion Foundry, which was across and along the way. Again, a small, very small kind of town, but with a heavy industrial base, which meant that it developed and it grew. And when that began to disappear, particularly in the UK in the 1980s, it was not replaced with large employers. Because it wasn't replaced with large employers, it meant that employment became service-based. There were a number of industries, a number of people looking for jobs in those industries, which were serving the public or working in the public sector. In fact, Scotland's entire economy is heavily reliant on organisations such as the local councils and the National Health Service to employ people. That is the use of taxation, so therefore there's almost like a circular motion going on, and our economy can not falter but can be vulnerable if public service funding comes under threat, because then wages are not going to be increased. The increase in wages doesn't lead to increased spend doesn't lead to the money going round and round. Now, industry, heavy industry in particular in Scotland, began to disappear in the 1980s. Pits where there was coal, of course, were now no longer a fossil fuel lover, because of the green movement. The fact that we have a green party in our government would suggest that we are moving very much towards a far more sustainable future in terms of our economic environment. But with the loss of heavy industry like coal, like shipbuilding, like manufacturing, even going down to places like Kilmarnock, where we have now lost the processing plant for Johnnie Walker whisky, it meant that there was a gap, and that when you came out of school at the age of 15, 16 in order to look for a job, there weren't any there. And whereas generations before, in the 70s and the 60s, had almost full employment, the ability to walk from one job into another, and then if you left a job on a Friday, you were often looking for a job over the weekend, found one for the Monday, that those became myths or stories told by old people to the younger ones to show how good it was in the bad old days, which they claimed were good old days. They weren't good old days at all. But the insecurity that brought also brought a lack of confidence, a lack of self-esteem in our products and the way that we saw ourselves within the entire world of nations. Whereas in Germany, what they apparently did in the 80s was that they invested in their industry. They saw not just the social benefit, but the long-term economic benefit of industry, so that they now don't just rely on service, but they still have a heavy manufacturing base, which is allowing the country to respond to any form of economic challenge in a very, very positive manner. Whereas here, a reliance on service industries can sometimes mean, and a reliance on local government jobs can mean, that we're very vulnerable to political change, very vulnerable to people deciding we're going to have austerity or we're going to make cuts. So, as we look towards the future, the more we see things that are commemorating the past, particularly our industry, the more it makes some of us hanker to the past, to the way in which there were large employers who were independent and commercial, that gave us some safety and security in having something in case the politicians decided there were greater priorities. Because we lead the way in sustainable energy in parts of, I think, Europe, and certainly I believe the world, though the claim has been disputed by others, that we have the capabilities of sustaining wind, sea power and so on that will allow us to develop a far greener response to the climate emergency. But in terms of keeping people in employment, raising their self-esteem and ensuring that we have a sustainable economic future, lots of these pieces of public art nod to the past, when we didn't have it so good now. We were told we had never had it so good in the 1960s by a Conservative Prime Minister, but the fact of the matter was we probably had, and we probably now do. But in terms of the industries that have been lost to us, it's worthwhile to remember that the working class worked in these factories, provided this art, this beauty, this weaving, and on the backs of them came the power, the finance, the muscle that the middle classes were then able to use to keep the working class downtrodden. So, heavy industry back? Maybe not. Large employers back? It would be nice to see something that raised parts of Scotland back in to economic viability. Nods to the past? Lovely. But a return? Maybe not. Till next week, bye for now.